in-depth race recaps.
He's shown speed, he's shown dominance at other racetracks.
Pit stops and strategy.
Hell yeah, boys. Let's go. Race strategy, man.
Fantasy racing insights.
Think about being a team in the summer. We did it. Good job, boys.
Your weekly home for everything Ryan Blaney and Team 12.
Good job, Timmy. Here's to many more, fellas. Thank you.
This is the Team Blaney podcast.
Let's go race for a championship.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 190 of the Team Blaney podcast. My name is Adam Rogers, and alongside me is co-host Steve Mez. This week, we are here to break down Ryan Blaney's run in the Viva Mexico 250 at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City. Steve, welcome back to another episode of the Team Blaney podcast. We were road racing in Mexico over the weekend for one of the more high-profile spectacle races of the year, NASCAR's first trip abroad with the Cup Series in 5+ decades. And of course, weather was involved, but not as much to the extent as it has been in some of these other marquee races, much like Chicago in years past. And I don't know, I was really excited for the weekend. I enjoyed the weekend, and I'm happy and glad to be able to talk about it with you now.
Congratulations first on the intro and not stumbling across those titles. Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. I had a lot of problems with that. I had to practice that hard to get that down. The Equipo Blaney podcast too, which I had to Google that, but put it together. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this weekend's adventure, and it was kind of cool because I had some good interaction online. We're just watching a couple different things, like the guys, finding out when the travel was, and then there was a situation of travel, but that they worked it out. And then just how the practice and the qualifying went. It went pretty well, and then the weather hit the qualifying, but everything that happened didn't stop it or slow down the momentum. And that was kind of cool too. Even the weather at the beginning of the race. So, pretty cool weekend overall. And this even Saturday's Xfinity race, was exactly perfect. It was almost like, of course there are people that think it was fixed. You get that crowd. The guy came from the dead last, in a backup car, but that happens too. There are guys who can pull it off, and he definitely did. That car, that track, he's driven that kind of car on that kind of track. So it's kind of like, not that kind of track, he's driven it on that track. So, I mean, he just showed off, what kind of skill and ability he has. And it was really great to see. And then, the cameras kind of focused on him on Sunday for the pre-race and stuff like that. It was a pretty emotional moment, watching him during the anthem. So it kind of gave you a great feeling for the whole thing, that it was really, really, really cool to watch. You on mute?
Like you said, they couldn't have really written it any better. But if anyone's in that conspiracy theory crowd, I mean, of course they rigged the race for him to win by, throwing a caution in the middle of a green flag run when he was leading with, a handful of laps to go. That's exactly what you want to see happen, and especially when it was a caution that was not thrown at all during the race. For a quick spin out, and it was almost thrown instantly at that. They didn't even think about it. It was like boom, right away. So I mean, backup car came all the way through the field, and he flipped a stage here or there, but it didn't really gain him tons of track position when he did it. And people can say that the top the two best cars crashed each other, whatever. They did, but they crashed each other while the 9 was going and taking the lead from them. So now, was he good on the short run like that? Of course. If it had gone green, if those guys hadn't crashed, he probably doesn't win the race, but you never know. But it was perfect, and I think it was the best case scenario for NASCAR. I didn't expect Suarez to go and win the Cup race. I thought he was going to have a decent chance in the equipment he was in. Junior Motorsports, who've with Sam Mayer and Allgaier, have won multiple road course races in the past. They always bring great equipment there. They're really confident that their backup was going to be okay. And the way he went from dead last to like the top 20, like immediately in that first stage, and then flipped it and got a little more position, then drove all the way to third on his own, had a huge restart. and then drove all the way to the front on the next restart. Kudos to him. Glad he got to celebrate in his hometown. I thought he was a great host all weekend. Honestly, there was a lot of pressure on him off the track to kind of welcome people to the area. I did find it interesting, and I think Jeff Gluck and some other media talked about it, that while Daniel was definitely the fan favorite, and mainly because he was from Mexico and everything, he still isn't necessarily like a national hero or widely known or anything, because he left like really early in his racing career to leave and go to the United States and pursue the NASCAR dream, and has had, decent success, but again, isn't necessarily a superstar in NASCAR either. But if they go back again next year and he is still in his ride, hopefully next year, or at least a ride, the fan response might be even bigger, because now it's like, okay, he's a winner, and he won on our home turf too. So I thought that was an awesome part of the weekend. Like I said, best case scenario for NASCAR, for him to win at least one of those races and pump up the crowd. And I think a majority of people are really excited about that.
Yeah, so hopefully, like we were talking beforehand, hopefully they just go ahead and go back there next year and give it even more of a run. There's always a learning curve. Like the whole travel situation caused a little bit of an issue. One or two of the teams, and they did a great job. Here's the thing: NASCAR said, okay, we're going to change practice schedule around. We're going to get so that the guys who were late can sleep a little bit and then just do things on Saturday. I didn't know this, but most of them stayed Sunday night. They didn't hurry up and get on the plane and then come home. They stayed Sunday night and then left Monday morning, which is kind of cool, except for
Hendrick.
Yeah, I don't get that.
Which I have questions about that too, actually. So
yeah. Well, they said it on the Prime broadcast there, and Letard actually said it. He says, "I take team building a little bit more than over being in the shop Monday morning," and I think he was right, because part of it is the travel. Okay, the distance traveled and the time traveled on a plane. Not everybody's a good flyer, and and recovery time is a thing. And to leave, they're 2 time zones behind us, and to leave that late on Sunday night and expect anybody to come into work Monday anyway, instead of getting up nice. They probably got up pretty early on Monday morning and got on their flights at 8 or 9 a.m., traveled throughout the day if there was a stop in there or whatever, and then got home and then rested on Monday night. You know what I mean? Because if you did that and left Sunday night and you expect those guys to be in the shop Monday, they're not going to.
I just thought it was more odd, because outside of the ones that ran into the issue where the charter, like NASCAR had set up all these charter flights, and there's that obviously highly publicized issue where an engine went south right before they took off, and now those teams all had to end up scrambling and booking their own travel. But I was like surprised to hear, like, when they said, "Oh, Hendrick's flying back on their team plane tonight," and it's like, well, I thought everybody was supposed to be traveling together. How'd they swing that? But if they go back next year, and I think I even said it before the weekend that I thought it was odd NASCAR was shuttling them all together. I was like, these teams can book their own travel. They know what they're doing when it comes to that. And I feel like that might be the direction they go in the future, just so it doesn't cause all this craziness that it did. But everybody got there. That was fun to follow along with the hauler drivers. I think the driver from Spire was, doing like basically almost like a blog the whole way down until they got to the track. And I like the comments that Kyle Larson made, I believe, and some of the stories that I saw that said the Cup drivers themselves got to know each other a lot better this weekend, because they were all staying in the same hotels and they're all riding the same shuttles to the track every day. And he said, we don't all really get to hang out with each other, basically, unless you're like friends like Bubba and Ryan and Chase. But, how often is, well, this might not be a good example. How often is Bubba and Larson, riding around together, to get to know each other. So that was kind of cool to see that camaraderie seemingly build up a little bit.
Well, that was the fun thing about Sunday night, except for the Hendrick people, is that there was like an industry party Sunday night. There was some video that I saw that Mamba was there, right? And, there was just a bunch of different people at that party, and it was an industry party. So you had something that you sometimes do at the end of the year, when you have your even at that, people kind of like separate themselves from others and so forth. But this here, you're all there and you're all invited. And, as long as everybody was healthy. That was the other thing. Yesterday, there were a lot of stories of guys who can't handle certain things, whether it's food or water or something. You're not supposed to drink the water. You're not supposed to drink anything with ice in it. So who knows who did what, but there was like about 5 or 6 stories for sure of guys that had issues, including Ryan. And, and for Ryan, it was probably just eating the local cuisine, which, they were given a recommendation of places to go. So who knows, I'm sure they'll be a little bit more careful about that too, if they go back,
Yeah. And that's going to happen. I mean, it happens on vacations and stuff that anybody runs into, but I will agree with Jordan Bianchi on this one. I don't want to discuss any of that. Sorry, Jeff. So beyond all of that, again, great spectacle. I think the only thing I would say to you that, and some other people have talked about it, a little disappointed in necessarily the turnout. Now, again, this is a place that, seats 100,000 plus people. There was still probably a really large amount of people there. There were lots of sections that they did not even sell, like on purpose, just because of the views and stuff. I think they're really focused on the stadium, turn 1, and some other areas. And I think that's maybe something that the promoter can work on next year. We've heard about ticket prices maybe being a little bit too high for an event like this. And if they do go back again, I'm hoping they can kind of work with that a little bit to give even more people the opportunity to go there. We've heard lots of stories about super diehard fans that made it there, and it'd be great for them if they want to keep growing, for them to make it available to the folks that really want to be there. Was not disappointed at all in the racing. And people can talk about the finish of the race. A leader wins by 15 plus seconds. We'll go over that, I'm sure. But if you only tuned into the third stage, I feel bad for you.
Yeah.
If you don't have access to the in-car cameras, I also feel bad as well, because I thought it was one of Ryan's. It wasn't the best finish by far, but one of Ryan's best road course races ever. By the moves he was making, by the speed he had in the car, by the way he could drive into the corner, his braking technique, his ability to handle the wet conditions and then transfer over to the dry conditions. He did fade at the end and finished around his career average area for road courses. But the racing, to me, from basically second and third on back, was fantastic. And we say that a lot, and it's like, oh, that's unfortunate, but to me, it wasn't another runaway victory that had no drama to it. It was an exciting race, in my opinion, and the course itself, tons of passing zones too. Yeah.
The part that we got robbed of is when that caution happened. It happened basically in a pit cycle.
Yeah.
And so, yes, SVG I think he was running 16th or 18th at the time, right? So the caution happens. Everybody who hadn't pitted yet has to pit now, because it's basically the last chance to pit before the end of the race. If that caution doesn't happen, we're going to see some strategies play out. We're going to see definitely the 54 had something for him.
He did.
And because we watched him during the race, he led a little bit. He actually, was behind him a little bit and chased him down. And it would have been interesting to see if there was no caution and everybody pitted under green, the different strategies, who pits when, and guys like Ryan would have done this probably too, where they pitted later and later and later, but then in the last 10 laps or so been 2 to 3 seconds faster than guys because they would have had tires under them. And a guy like, if he had a good clean stop, a guy like Gibbs could have got to him because he was running not far behind him to begin with when the whole thing happened. So and he was actually out in front when the actual caution happened, but the pit cycle happened. He was running with him. So we kind of got robbed of that, and that's what kind of screwed everything up because the 54 gets caught back in the pack basically, and he races his way through a little bit, but he doesn't have the chance to actually race with him the way he could have. There was more than one good car out there. But yeah, unless if you're paying attention to either the in-car camera from Max or even on your app, even if you've got the app open and you're watching the the timing and scoring and so forth, there was a lot of action. There were a lot of guys close together. There's a portion of the race for Ryan near the end, the last 20 or 30 laps, where he can see the next 4 places in front of him within a second or two. So, there was a lot of actual racing going on besides SVG,
Yeah, and Ryan had a very interesting race. I'm looking forward to discuss it as we go through the recap, especially when it maybe even gets to the little flare-up of the old Jones-Blaney rivalry from years past, too.
Yeah.
So that was an interesting part of the race for me. If you don't want to discuss it, that's fine. I'll talk about it.
So no, it's fine. I'm just trying to think if I have anything special written in my notes or not. I think I do. I have something at some point.
Maybe when you talk about him getting pat, because he loses like 3 or 4 spots during that.
Yeah, because of what happens.
But yeah, let's talk about it. We talked about everything, but we just finally talked a little bit about Ryan's race, and I think it's something that I'm looking forward to. So talk about practice talk about qualifying, and talk about the first stage of the race.
Yeah, so they kind of, like I said, they kind of moved the practices around, but they still had Friday practice, 50 minutes, the first practice. The 99 misses turn 4. There were a couple guys that missed turn 4 early in practice, having to learn where to brake. And that was interesting. It's like a learning curve. After 3 or 4 laps, you might know where to brake better. You've figured it out, but you do it in the simulator. It's a simulator, and it's a little harder than once you're finally out there. So Ryan, the 1 lap guy with the early speed was the 71 car. Ryan's first lap was like P21, but then lap 2 jumped to P8, and the 2 car was actually the fastest lap after a little bit here. Ryan, by lap 3, was P11, about a half a second back of the 2 car. And then the 19 car actually puts a lap up and goes to the top of the board. They pit after 4 laps. Now, I don't, it's kind of interesting. Like, these practices are kind of hard to tell, how fast they really are, because there are, they're running individual laps. They're not running next to each other. Are they trying to figure out how the car is going to work when they're running next to each other? So that's something that people don't, you just want, everybody looks at individual lap speed, and, I always like to pull 5 and 10, 15 lap averages when they have them on an oval. Well, this here, they're not even doing that because they're only getting 4 or 5 laps in. So it's kind of really hard to tell what's going on, what the agenda is here. The 4 slapped the wall going into 4, and he ended up having to get a backup car out. The 51 spins out. The 77 causes a caution. He crashed going to the stadium section. Ryan wants to know where the alternate start-finish line is. 6 laps in, he's P20. So he wants to know for qualifying time, where it's going to be. They pit after 8 laps, So then they get about 30 minutes in here. They come back out. Overall, the lap average. Here's the funny part. So his lap average, as he is running more laps, and this is just combining all the laps. And mind you, they're heat cycling these tires as they do this. It went from like 15th to 12th, which tells me he was getting faster, or at least running more consistent laps as it was going along, which, is encouraging to me. That's when I find my little nuggets of, things I'm excited about. That was with two heat cycles on the tire. They pit after lap 12. Once again, another 4-lap thing. Shane is the top guy after eight laps on that overall average. And Ryan is about a second back on him on 12-lap average. So 5 minutes to go here. The 71 sets the new single lap run. I don't know if he came out on fresh tires or something. He had to. There's what I got here. Lots of guys are locking up the right front going into turn 1. So there's a little bit of tire smoke on different guys. The overall was like P22, but 0.725 back. So, really tight field for, 30 some cars, at that point, and to be, not only, less than a second in a distance that is over a minute and a half long, So we get to practice 2 later on, just this little half hour or 25-minute practice here. The 4 is working on his backup car at this point. 2 laps in, Ryan is P1 on the board, right? So the mood goes, up through the roof. Oh, wait a minute. We are good. We got speed. The driver obviously takes laps of running and, figured it out. And whatever they adjusted real well. About 3 or 4 laps in, the 1 car goes to P1. Ryan is only about 0.2 back, 0.206 back. At lap 4, the 34 actually goes top of board, which was kind of a surprise to me. 6 laps in, they pit. 12 minutes in, they're P4 on the board, 0.346 back of that single run here. And then 15 minutes in, they come back out. They do a hot pit road entry, basically. The overall lap average at this point was second of the group in that practice. So all of a sudden, practice number 2 is just like way better, right? So then we get to Saturday, and I didn't even write the notes on Saturday. Saturday was pretty simple. They changed the qualifying procedure a little bit based on the fact that there was weather coming. They wanted to give everybody a shot to get out there and get a lap or 2 in. And that's basically what happens. Ryan gets his lap in, but the weather shows up. Barely, yeah.
Yeah, it rained right at the end of basically the end of his lap, and I was like, man, and they waited, because they do this. They tend to wait till the end of the session sometimes for road courses to make a lap, and they did. And I think the reports of the rain, the sprinkles around the track happened like just after he set a time. Yeah. And it wasn't like the best time ever. And I think if maybe they had a little more time to make one more quick run, they could have improved it. But where did they end up? 18th?
18th.
Yeah.
18th
so not
too bad. But. Shane on the pole, which is to be expected, I think. But, a lot of
guys that waited as well that were maybe ran early and were going to go out one more time. Mm-hmm. There's a lot, like if you look at the qualifying order, there's a lot of good guys in the middle and back of the field too.
Yeah. So there was, we I think texted at one point about optimism and how I felt that they were doing pretty well, even though, and then I think early in the race, you said something and about, well, he's kicking everybody's butt and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I didn't think Ryan was going to win by beating him head on. I thought Ryan would do what he did at the Roval, right? Run 3rd or 4th. And all of a sudden 2 guys decide to be idiots racing for the position. And he pops out behind them,
Yeah, everybody. Steve talked him up all weekend long, because I said, if they get out of here with stage points in the top 15, I'm going to be super happy. And Steve went on like why can't he win? What's stopping him from winning all this stuff? Yeah, and then the race is going on. I'm excited because Ryan's driving like through the field, making amazing moves. And I'm thinking, like, if the things go right, he can have a chance to win. And Steve's like, nobody's touching the 54 and the 88. It's like, come on.
Yeah, and that's what. And then I said, my expectation was maybe he'll get close enough to them and they'll beat each other out and knock each other over, and then he'll come by them, But the other thing about it is, and we'll go through this, and I think I mentioned it earlier, is this caution that happens late in stage 3 kind of changes things for him too, where I would have liked to have seen a whole green flag run with a green flag pit cycle, because for sure. I think they would have shaken out a little bit better than where they ended up. I think that they were better than a lot of guys, and then he would have had fresher tires than a lot of guys. And late in a run, because they probably would have pitted a little later than when they did too. They probably would have waited about 3 or 4 more laps, and would have had, like I said, fresher tires at the end. And that ends up being
a lot of guys that did pit before the caution came out that weren't better than him. So that definitely slowed his progress down.
And that's the thing, is like when you pit as a group, let's say there were 15 or 16 that pitted together. Now you're all on the same tires. Now it all depends on how you wear out. Whereas if the cycle continues and he pits later than 10 or 12 of those guys, at some point he might pass 5 or 6 of those guys and really, really, have a better result than what we saw. But we get to Sunday. We got stages at 20, 45, and then 100. 6 sets of tires, 5 sets of wets, which ends up being important. And then, like I said, on the broadcast right away, they're talking about SVG and Noah Gragson, a couple of different people having the flu bug. Pit stall 19 here, behind the 20 and in front of the 41. Another good thing about a green flag cycle is you don't have to worry about how small the pit boxes are. I guess they were the smallest they'll see all year.
This comes into play too later on in the race. There's a point when they're deciding strategy and when to pit, and it's centered on when the 41 is. Then it was weird because I was like, why is this happening? Because the 41 was like way ahead of Ryan, and they're like, if the 41 pits, we stay out. If they don't pit, we come in. And I'm like, what's going on? And then I go back to the chart and realize they're pitted next to each other.
Right.
And Skip had mentioned that tightest pit boxes on the circuit. So it's a big reason why.
Yeah. And the 41 would have came in and around him because he was behind him. He would have came in and around him and probably pinched him in. And then who knows what, then you'd have to back up and move around and lose 2-3 seconds of time there. So we had Mule helping, and we had Penza was the last name. I didn't catch the first name. It was, Penza had turn 1 down the end of the long straightaway and then up through that way. Mule had 8, 9, and 10, and then handed him off going into the stadium section, and then Timmy took him from there. So really, really worked well together. It sounded like a mess on the radio if you listen to it, but what was going on and people didn't realize is they talked a lot to each other on a different channel that Ryan couldn't hear them. So it sounded like a lot of radio chatter, but all they were really doing was talking about how to pass them off and certain situations and who's going to tell them what, where, and when. So it sounded like it was a mess, but it really wasn't. And I know this because they worked a lot of these kinks out during the Xfinity race. Tim still had those 3 guys for the Xfinity race too, for his guy. So the communication was really good to me. I told Mule after the race, I sent him a message, told him what a good job, because he was very, very distinct at what was going on and what they were going to do when it was his turn to tell Brian something. So it was really, really good hearing that from him. He was not shy, and he's done it, been doing it for years, on road courses. So
Eric is Penza's first name.
Okay, Eric, thank you. I'm sorry, I missed that, Penza. So on the literally drops on the windshield during the pace laps. Light mist in 8, Mule says. Lap 1 is going to be on the outside of turn 1, and it's raining in 15 pretty hard. And Mule, Tim, and Jonathan all talk about what to do, and right away, let's pit for the wets, stop it short in the box. The one that actually takes the lead off of pit road here, and Ryan was in 18th, out 19th. And here's the deceiving thing: I will read you these pit times, but they're backwards. These pit stops, I don't know if people were paying attention. They pitted the other side of the car first. The way they come down pit road on the other end of the car, the fuel is on the other end of the car. Everything is reversed. So watching the footwork, it's crazy because they're not doing it like they normally do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they practiced it a ton of times. But there was a 13.680, and that sounds horrible, right? To your ear, it's like 13, but it was one position. So it tells you everybody had that problem. And part of it was they had to avoid the 22 on pit road. For some reason, the 22 was backward down pit road. He missed his box.
Did you see Ryan's in-car? I don't know if how close you're paying attention. It was scary. Because they're telling Ryan one lane, but he had no choice but to swerve. And luckily he swerved to the left, missed the 22 by mere inches, and then immediately comes on the radio saying whoa, what was he doing? This is not a place you want to be backing up. But I guess they had a loose wheel and they had to come fix it.
Yeah.
But man, that was close.
Now, here's something interesting too, and I didn't realize this, but because of CODA years ago with the rain, they had a rule where NASCAR could have a single file restart. And Tim and Mule are on there going, ask somebody, we got to ask for it, and we got to ask them, but with those conditions, they could have called a single file restart. They did not. I think they wanted to have the the 2 and the 17 stay out on slicks. So that's actually where one of the positions was lost, which is funny. So they didn't actually lose a position on a pit road. They actually gained one. 17 assumes the lead here, and the 2's P2 on the slicks here. They're choosing here. And Ryan chooses what would be the inside of turn 1, the right-hand side. They restart lap 4 here. The 54 gets the lead, and Ryan is like in 23rd in this mess, right? And lap 6, 24th here. But the 2 basically is backing up to everybody on his slicks, and he's just causing a melee in the field. And this is part of why it's nothing to do with Ryan or the car. It's just trying to get around him. And at lap 7, we get a caution here, and we get this caution for the 8, the 5, the 16, the 7, the 38, the 19 in turn 4. The 8 caused it. I don't know. The 38 caused it, hitting the 8. It was just really weird. Like, did he just brake and didn't catch the brakes well enough?
The 8 driver said that he thought he could go deeper than he really could. And I think he said it was maybe based on how they were running earlier, based on practice or whatever. But he said, like, he went all the way down to like marker 10 or something, and he really should have braked at like 6 or 7. So he put it on himself. He says he just lost it. And then, he took out, a lot of good cars. The 5, it would have been interesting to see, the 5 is one of the guys with, I think, 3 road course victories, tied with Reddick for the most in the next gen car. I think he would have been somebody to have to deal with later in the race, or somebody that could at least contend up front. So 5 gets taken out immediately. 38 gets taken out. The 16 gets damaged. It took out a lot of guys that were poised to maybe have some good days. But I felt for the 38. It was kind of him. It was just he, didn't have a choice there. He just got just not destroyed. I think he went on after. But man, he looked like a missile, and that happens in these road courses sometimes, especially a new one. I think we've seen Indy. Especially when they're going into turn 1 in Indy, sometimes people will miss that. And sometimes if you miss it, you can go into the runoff. In this case, he missed it and just piled into
everybody.
People. But Ryan made it through. So
Ryan was good there. Ryan says he doesn't know what to recommend, just trying to figure it out. So it's kind of interesting. He didn't really get enough laps, or couldn't figure out what to do. And they were on the wets, and the 54 is leading here. We're staying out here. The 5 and the 8 have heavy damage. Ryan chooses the outside, which will be the left-hand side going into 1. Restart lap 10 here from P13 here. The 88 takes the lead. And lap 11, we're chasing the 9. Then we pass the 9 in the stadium section. At lap 12, we pass the 41 and the 34 to get to 10th. And then, and the 43 in the stadium section. We're up to P9, all in a couple laps, Lap 13, past the 71, the 20 get to 7th. And then at lap 14, passing the 10 to get to 6th here. And then passing the 99 in the stadium section, again, to P5 here. And that was a great little tight right-handed 90-degree turn, and then a left in the stadium and a couple S's in the stadium. And if you hit it just right, got underneath the guy, you got a great launch.
Two things he was doing that I noticed was, one, into turn 1 and turn 4, he could outbrake people. He could go way deeper than anybody else could, which I'm not sure if that's setup or fortitude that was allowing him to do that. But that was awesome to see. And then the second thing, like you say, he was making a lot of laps passes in the stadium, and it was cool watching the in-car camera, because the way he would set it up is just like you said. You kind of you actually set up the pass like a couple turns ahead, to where you peek to the left, you peek to the right, peek to the left, and then boom, inside again, right, and then make the pass. It was like textbook every time. And I know a lot of people, one, it was good, in the chat, were glad that that second practice speed was, it was being proven here that it was real.
Yeah.
And then people were just so kind of surprised or upbeat, because again, he is the Roval win, and he has a handful of top 5s on road courses, but again, he usually finishes in this 12th to 16th area, and that's what we expect. And it was man, he's making good moves. It's not other guys messing up and him being the benefit of that. He's making these passes and going up and taking those positions. And that's why, again, they don't get the best finish, but one of the best road course races he's run.
Yeah. So we get this, lap 16, we're chasing the 1 and the 60. We pass the 1, get to 4th here, the 54 pits. Lap 18, we're staying out here. They're racing for the stage win. We're chasing the 60 for the stage win. It was pretty cool. Lap 20 here, the 60 wins the stage, Ryan P2. So right off the bat, we're doing things for points. And this is kind of interesting because a lot of times when you're trying to win the race, you race these things backward and you pit before the end of the stage, and then you get your position back basically. And the guys who do the opposite of that, they need some strategy to happen later on in the race to work their way to get back up. And like I said, later on, we'll talk about what happens with the caution. It kind of screws that all up. But P2 right off the bat here,
And it's
most
important, in my opinion, because you're talking about them going for the points here. One, they have a win in the bag now. So they're trying to get the playoff points. Ryan said after the stage ended that he thinks if he did a couple things differently, he thinks he could have got to the 60. But it was also great to hear him confident in his car.
Yeah.
But they have that win in the bag. So there's two things that are important: getting as many of the playoff points as they can, and getting as many points in general, including these stage points, because the higher you finish up in the regular season standings, the more bonus points you get in going into the playoffs. And at a race like this, especially with his past and really just anybody's past at road courses, they can get super chaotic. You can be running in the top 5, get taken out on the last lap, and finish 30th. So having this cushion early in the day with stage points, I thought was well worth it, especially when they knew they had a
I don't know if we lost Adam there, but we lost him both things. I don't know if his internet went down, but I'll go on here while we're waiting on that, because most of the guys who pitted there before the end of the stage, they took slicks. So part of the strategy now going into this is to go ahead and probably put the slicks back on here. The guys are reporting in from the different spotters reporting in about how the track is looking here. So they're they're going to go ahead with slicks here on this pit and choose the outside here. It was a 12.620 pit stop, but it's hard to tell where in position they end up being with this pit stop, because what ends up happening is the guys who pitted before the end of the stage now take position. So restarting from P21 here, the top 4 are basically still on the wets. So that gets a little bit crazy at the front here. And restart lap 23 here. The second car, he was actually second of the cars that pitted. So they actually did pretty good on that pit sequence here. The cars that stayed out that left the slicks on were 71, the 1, 77, and 34. We'll have to see how that works out for them. The 4-car spins, there's no caution. Ryan is in 22nd at this point here. By lap 25 here, the 42 hits the barrier in front of Ryan. But Ryan gets around him to 20th here. The 54 is leading at this point. At lap 27, the 34 gets booted in 19, and the 34 gets booted, and we're up to P19. And this happens in turn 15 here, right before you get back to the start-finish line. Lap 28, we're P18 is passing the 35. And some cars are starting to pit here. So all of a sudden, we're like up to 16th. At lap 29 here, we pass the 47 to get to 15th. At lap 32, we get a caution for the 11. The tires fall off too quickly here. Lap 54, we're still leading here, and Ryan is P15. I'm going to pause for 1 second here and get with Adam and see what happened to his internet. If he went down or not. He was talking about having a problem. So, sorry if I paused that for a second there. Yeah, we're having a technical difficulty with Adam, but we'll keep going on the streams here because we're live and it does record everything to YouTube and Facebook. So, and then we're doing a number 4 here on this pit sequence here. Ryan, like I said, is in 15th here. And John says, if the 41 pits, I want to stay out. And this was what we were talking about earlier. The 41 is pitting in front of Ryan here, and they don't want to get pinned with him, pitting with him. So the 41 does pit, and Tim tells Ryan to stay out here. Ryan's in 14th here for this restart here, choosing the left lane, which is the outside of turn 1. and the restart lap 34, and it sorts out to P9. Passes the 9 in the stadium section to get to 8th. At lap 38 here, Ryan says the back end is flopping all around. So something, he says it feels weird. Something weird's going on. About 7 seconds back of the lead at that point, though. The 43 pits with a flat tire here. Tim is looking for tire debris because he's thinking maybe they get lucky, pit before there's a debris caution. Yeah, he's Adam's saying we should stall in the TikTok because we lose the recording end of things on this. So what's interesting is I've got a couple notes there, but who's up on the TikTok right now? We can talk to the TikTok for a second or two. I see Chelsea's in there. Joe, Mike, Barry. All right, what's up? How we doing? Yeah, there's me and Justin. Okay, well, cool. I'm sorry, but we had to I don't know what happened. It just crashed on him, and I don't know why it did that. I don't know if we have to start a new stream. I hope not. Like I said, I've got pretty good into the notes here, but I know where we left off, and I can start over too. So, plus we have to talk about the Fantasy Live League and how good Adam did. Jerry, what's going on? Are you still there? I'm sorry, I didn't. We can talk to the guys in that are in here too. If you guys are on like Facebook and YouTube, you can type a message in real quick, and we'll talk to you guys too. I see Jerry was in there. See, add to the stream. So okay, I'm gonna do that. All right. Well, that's weird. Jerry's on Facebook. What's going on, Adam? Do we lose the recording on this too?
It's still going.
Is it? So it was still recording as I was doing that? Because I kept going.
Do you want to
Do you want me to go back to where I left off and start from where I left off?
We started at right after the end of the stage, but hopefully in the internet. I don't want to say anything bad about any big time NASCAR sponsors, but
yeah, I thought you had
a lame duck sponsor of the former Busch and Nationwide Series is letting me down and claims they're going to come out to check what's going on at my house on Friday. But the internet's been really weird since about 10 minutes before the Cup race on Sunday. So I'll stay out of the TikTok, I guess. So those folks will have to miss me just in case.
Oh, well, you think that's what did it?
I don't know. I mean, I can go back, but
go back.
We'll see.
It might be this configuration.
But no, the stream's still up. I turned it off of Instagram, I think. So yeah, thanks for anybody that is watching live. This was fun.
Yeah.
But it claims that it still kept going. But,
yeah. Well, if it kept recording, it was nice. But you're gonna have to edit that, I guess, or whatever. But the actual audio, the actual video of this is fine either way, right? I mean, it's going to go on YouTube the way it is, and it's going to go on Facebook the way it is. So
people will enjoy this middle part.
I'm just talking to Jerry because Jerry was typing back to me here. I don't know. I said hi to Scott there. If Scott's still on YouTube or not. I see we've got some viewers on Facebook and YouTube, so that's great.
All right, I'm jumping back in the TikTok if you accept
we'll get you back in. Accept you there. Everybody wants to see your smiling face on the TikTok. I don't know why I call it the TikTok. I don't know. That's weird because there you are. Mute your phone and then there you go. We're good there. And get your visual in. All right.
I'm here until I'm not. So
you see until he's not, and then I'll just keep going and then
finish the show.
Oh man.
All right. End of the stage. I was just saying.
Finish second stage 2 there. And I do have a note of where I left off. I kind of kept going. So if you know that if you're going to try to edit it or whatnot, but so most who pitted before the stage end took slicks. The guys they're reporting in from the track about what's how the track conditions are here, and it's a 12.620 pit stop here, and they're going to choose the outside, which is the left-hand side going into turn one. And he's P21, but the top 4 guys are still on their wets. The 71, the 1, the 77, 34 here. And Ryan is the second car of the ones who pitted. So that 12.620 was a very good pit stop. And, they restart lap 23 here, and the 4 car spins out, no caution. And then we get lap 25 here. The 42 hits the barrier in front of Ryan. Ryan gets the 20th on that. The 54 is leading at this point. At lap 27, the 34 gets booted by Ryan. He was just tired of his stuff, and Ryan gets the 19th. At lap 28, the passes the 35 here to get to 18th. Some of the cars are starting to pit now, and Ryan gets up to 16th with that. At lap 29, passing the 47 to get to 15th. At lap 32, we get a caution for the 11. And Ryan says the tires are falling off really quick, which becomes something later too, So the 54 is still leading here. Ryan is in P15 here. They said they're going to do a number 4 here, and Ryan says copy. So this is the point where Jonathan says something about the 41 pits. I want to stay out. And then if the 41 doesn't pit, we want to come in. But the 41 does pit, so they stay out. Ryan gets up to 14th. We choose the left, which is the outside going to turn 1 here. Restarting at lap 34 here. Sorts out to P9. Really good here. We pass the 9 there in the stadium section to get to 8th. Lap 38 here. Ryan says the back end is flopping all around. Something feels weird. And then, he's about 7 seconds back of the lead, in 8th, which isn't bad here. The 43 pits for a flat tire. And everybody starts looking for tire debris from this because they think, well, maybe if they catch pit before caution, that kind of thing. But lap 39 here, we pass the 10. And we're up to P7 here. And they kind of rub doors a little bit, actually. We're almost up to P6 here, which is the 24 car by the stadium section here. And then at lap 40, the 2 pits, so we do get to 6th. The lap 41, the 24 pit, and we pass him to get to 5th. The 54 leads. The 88 is right behind him, and Ryan is 5th, about 11 seconds back. At lap 43, the 54 pits, and now we're up to 4th. And, only 2 more laps in the stage here. The 88 wins the stage, but Ryan finishes P4. So now we've gotten 2 stages. We've hit 2nd, 4th. This is great for my fantasy team because I decided to put him in the lineup after he finished 2nd in the stage, right?
Yeah.
Didn't care about whoever I had at that point. Stage points are huge.
Keep banking the stage points, again, for any chaos that can happen later. It's funny, you did have a note there about the 10. And you said, it looks like they rub doors. Remember that. Because that favor gets returned at
he takes
a
care
little
of
bit
him
later on, before the 40, right before the 43 incident. So
Ryan's talking about rear ends, security here, a little more rear grip, and Jonathan asks if it feels like it did in the last practice over the curbs. So they're very specific about what they could do to adjust it here. Pit road's open here. 4 tires. That's 12.860 here. Mule reports a light mist over where he's at. And, we're P25 for this choose here. They lose position, they stayed out. And everybody else had pitted before the end of this, So, and Ryan asks, we're pitting one more time, right? And Johnson says 10-4. So in the next, 50 laps or whatever it is, they one more pit stop's what they're planning on. We're restarting lap 50 here, and a bunch of people had actually stayed out, obviously, because they pitted before. So we're choosing the left here, the outside and going into turn 1 here. And Tim says, now you're going to have better tires than some of the guys who pitted 3 or 4 laps before the end of the stage here. So basically everyone in front of you. 20 actually takes the lead at this point, but P17 by the end of the lap. So 8 positions gained here by the end of the lap. Tells you how good his restart was. Lap 51 here, passing the 11 and the 24 to get to 15th. And the 88 gets back to the lead. He carved his way up through there. At lap 52, the 10 passes us and we're 16th. And then the lap 53, we have this thing with the 43 passing and get to 17th, and then others get by. And I think there's something here where they got kind of doored, basically.
Yeah.
And Ryan makes a comment later on, like, what was his problem?
So early on, so again, this isn't the 43, but the 10. So when Ryan passed the 10 earlier in the previous stage, he roughed him up to get by. So when the 10 got to Ryan in this stage, he booted him totally. And got him out of the way. In that process, I think Ryan was gathering things up, and the 43 went to pass, and they make some door-to-door contact there. And I don't think it was Ryan was intentionally doing anything. I think he was trying to gather it up after the 10 just tried to send him. And but so the 43 gets by. Ryan, this is all my opinion again. The 43 gets by, Ryan chases him down immediately, starts dooring him. The 43 though just turns down onto Ryan and doors Ryan straight into the wall. Right. On the inside or outside, whatever it's considered on this course. And then the 43 gets away after that. Then that's when Ryan gathers it back up. But people have passed him since then. I think you hear Penza come on the radio and says on channel 2 and says hey, I don't know if you should, basically says, paraphrasing, we should say something, but if he just needs to calm down, he just lost a bunch of spots by kind of losing his cool. And I'm like, yep, yeah, he did. So, because I think if he would have just gone back after the 43 and just set him up for a pass again, he was faster than him. Yeah, but he went back to him again and repaid, the contact he just got. But I was like, oh, maybe that wasn't the best time to move it. And again, I say that as the fan sitting on his couch watching the race of what I would do behind the wheel. But I brought that up because Ryan and the 43, for longtime Ryan fans, have a pretty long history of contact out on the track that I will say goes all the way back to Ryan destroying him for his first Talladega win. But again, that happens on those tracks sometimes. But then there was an issue on the Daytona road course, and then there's been issues. Anytime they're around each other, they race extremely hard. And this was the first time there's been contact in that mini rivalry in a while. But I wasn't surprised to see it. But man, I was worried that he was going to throw the race away by getting in that little scuffle. But he got some fire. Fiery.
So we end up about 20th with this, because they lost a position or 2 or 3 there. And at lap 55, we passed the 21 to get to 19th. Lap 57, passing the 23 and the 60 to get to 17th. Passing the 10 to get to 16th. We got back to him. We got past him. At lap 58, passing the 42 to get to 15th. Lap 60 here, the 19 basically is in the way with older tires, and he passed him in the stadium section to get to 14th. Lap 61, the 35's in front of us with tires that are older by a bunch, and passed him to get to 13th. At lap 20, the next lap, the 20 also pits, so now we're up to 12th. And at lap 62, we passed the 17 to get to 11th in the stadium section. The 48 pits, we're up to 10th. Lap 63 to 88 pits from the lead. We're up to 8th. We passed the 43. We get to 7th. And then at lap 65, we get this caution that basically, like I said, screws up all the strategies because it gathers up everybody who hasn't pitted yet. And now you're all going to pit at the same time. And you're all going to be on the same stuff. And it really kind of, like I said, it jacks it up because I know what Jonathan likes to do with Ryan, and that's go long and then come in and give him fresh stuff and have it be fresher than everybody else's, and then watch him pick his way back through. And it would have been so much fun to watch him gain all them positions, because when this happens at this point in time, he's probably going to be inside the top 10, not just near the top 10, I think. I feel. But the 77 is the culprit here. He spins out right before pit lane, and he sits there to make sure he gets the caution. We can't blame him. He sits there to get a caution. Ryan is in 6th at this point. The 54 is leading, and this sucks for the 54 because I think he's on that type of strategy too. He would have hung out there a couple more laps, then came in, probably got back to SVG pretty quickly because they would have, cycled out close to where they were running with each other and then had fresher stuff later in the race. So we're pitting when it's open here. And we're open in and out. The 20 and the 41 have already pitted. It's an 11.320 stop, and this might as well be a 9-second stop if they're pitting on the other side. This is a huge pit stop. They actually beat a couple cars off of pit road. So they're I think I have P18 coming off of pit road here. Chooses the right lane, the inside going into turn 1. Restart lap 68 here, sorts all the way up to 12th. A great restart coming through some people. The 88's taking the lead here. At lap 70, we're chasing the 71 car, one of the better guys. At lap 73 here, the 22 punts the 3 in the stadium section. I thought that was kind of interesting. Lap 75 here, Ryan says, tell the 19 spotter he's going to get moved. There's a point in time where he's just behind the 19. He's faster than 19. The 19's just doing a good job of blocking every move. At lap 78, Mule says there's rain in turn 8. So now they're worried about maybe having to go to wets. And at lap 79 here, the next 4 places, like I said, they're right in front of him. He's chasing the 71. Lap 83, like I said, all the strategies are played out now. Everything is just spread out, and barring any kind of mayhem,
Just note he's pushing really hard, especially behind the 19, trying to do everything he can, outbrake him, but he's getting blocked on every corner, essentially.
Yeah. So at lap 88, he's behind the 54, and then he passes him at lap 90 to get to 11th. Lap 95, he passed the 1 to get to 10th, and I'm thinking, perfect here. We get to top 10. We've talked about this before. There's been a race or two, like Richmond at one point a couple of years ago. Ryan went on the last lap and passed from 11th to 10th, and what a feeling it was just to get to 10th, But at lap 96, it kind of falls apart here. The 24 passes. And at lap 98, the 54 passes. So we're down to 12th here. And lap 99, we get the 16 and 23 coming by. And he just lost the rear end. He just lost the grip. He would work, like you said, so hard to get those positions. And other guys may not have had to have driven as hard at those points and times, and they had the tires under them later on and were able to make a clean pass. So the clip I posted, like I said, on TikTok and then so forth, it's the last lap of the race. And it was so funny because Tim says 1 lap to go, and then there's like a little pause, and then you hear Ryan say, thank God. And, it's relief, but he worked really hard. He drove really hard. And, 88 does win the race. Ryan, P14. So overall, second in one stage, 14 in another stage. And then 14th is really not bad. It was actually the 5th best point guy on the day, when you look at it. And that's really amazing when you think about it. The finish says 14th, but it's the 5th best points guy on the day. And as you'll probably talk about here in the standings in a minute, it was definitely a really good run for that.
Yeah, it was great for him. And like I said, it's weird to say that a 14th place finish, especially when he's won the Roval, so technically won a road course before that. I feel like this was one of his best drives ever, just because the way, I think, and some of it was just because the car, I feel like it was also like one of the best road course cars he has had, because outside of that one time saying he was losing the rear end, I don't remember any over the top, this is, we need to fix this, we need to do this. You'll get that sometimes from him when he doesn't like the handle. You didn't hear that at all, except for just that one run. And honestly, I think they even stayed out after that, when they could have come and got tires or something, and he made passes after. So, I think you just saw him race aggressively. My only fear, Steve, is outside of the contact with the 43 and stuff. He dodged and missed a lot of mayhem. Yeah. And for a guy that people say doesn't have a lot of luck on his side, I'm concerned how much luck he may have used up in this thing. Because between missing the 22 on pit road and missing several guys spinning, people missing turns completely, what happened with early in the race when he doored the 10, but then the 9 came through and took the 10 out completely.
Yeah.
like at one point. So Ryan like missed that because the 9 missed the corner essentially, but Ryan had basically shoved the 10 in front of him and let him take the run of that. I was like, oh man, he's used up a lot of luck in this thing.
Maybe it's just the luck is the thing. Maybe it's just somebody else's bad luck for a while now, and he can have some good luck for a while now.
Yeah.
You want to talk about Hocelar for a second and what he did at the end of the race?
Yeah, he made some bad decisions. I mean, beyond the caution situation, but yeah, being a lap down and sending it into a corner.
That's it.
Into a guy you already have a beef with.
Right. Well, first off, I think he has no clue who it was.
Yeah, okay? I don't think so either. Yeah, you're right.
But the point that you just made is the biggest point, and that is he was a lap down. Unless you're racing with somebody who's on your lap, and they should make you aware of that. Yeah, so maybe his spotter needs to make him more aware that there was no reason to do what he did. But we watched Ryan 3 and 4 laps down at Michigan, and he was faster than the 10 cars in front of him, right? He could have went up there and mixed it up with them, but why? You weren't going to gain any laps back doing it, right? So it was just, we use the word stupid, but it was. There was no reason or being for him to do what he was doing. And that's the part that gets me. It's not that it happened. It's why are you in that situation to begin with? You're a lap down. You're not racing anybody in that situation for the lucky dog. That's the other thing. If you're worried about the lucky dog, that's great. If you're racing that guy for the lucky dog, that's okay. But you're racing with somebody who's on the lead lap racing for positions, and you just caused them to have, lost all the positions because now they're spun out and having to get straightened back out. So what happened in the post race was spectacularly great because they caught the audio from the in-car camera. They did a great job of yanking it and putting it with what you saw. My favorite was there's a view from Jordan Bianchi. If you can find Jordan's video, Jordan's video is up pit road a little bit, and you can see Josh Berry in his Dex fire suit. He had gotten out of the car. He watches Stenhouse walk by, and then he kind of leans on the post like, let's see what happens next.
Yeah, and I think Carson, there may be two things here. Again, they'd be stupid. He would have needed a caution to get back on the lead lap. So again, if that'd be really dumb if that's what his thought process there was. Now he says he just wheel hopped and got in too hot, and it is what it is. But that's one thing I could see people thinking is like him trying to spin somebody out. That's really not the place to spin somebody out and get a caution there, though, in that section. So I think it was more of a mistake. And the only other thing I could see justifying him racing so hard, again, he's not in the situation, was if he was like racing like somebody that was in like the second or third position and he's trying to unlap himself and he had fresher tires or something at the front of the field. Neither of those scenarios were playing out. Made a horrible mistake. I mean, I think for him, he's making he's been in the sport for a while though. People thought he learned a lot of lessons in trucks, but he's super young. He is learning a lot of lessons here. He has a lot of speed. He just needs to keep learning them. And unfortunately, he keeps running into the same guy right now. That's probably not the best guy to do it to. So
somebody, a spotter, crew chief, whoever needs to tell him, don't make a bad day worse. He was already having a bad day. He already had situations. The whole weekend was not good for him. He was sloppy on a road course. He spun it out in practice. He spun it out in the middle of the race. And here's another situation where don't spin it out anymore. You're not racing to win the race. You're not even racing to get your lap back at that point. Try to learn how to drive it and learn how to drive it so that when you come back next year, maybe you're better. So I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was the Stenhouse parts of it is funny as heck. It's like we get back to the States. Because he didn't want to get arrested. I don't think he wanted to get arrested in Mexico for assaulting somebody, Although Jordan says that at least in the United States, they tell the local authorities that they will police the drivers on track to not come rushing in to do anything, that their security will take care of it. So, which I find really, really interesting. That's kind of boys have at it a little bit, in a way, but also NASCAR kind of gets in the way pretty quick when
Yeah. Also says they must have a great insurance policy for that, because that could be an issue too if
Yeah,
it is now known that they tell the local police to hang back. So
hang back. So
all right, so we'll see whatever happens at once both of those hit. Both of those guys are probably back in the U.S. at this point, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think it's going to take one more thing, and Ricky will get more physical. I think he punched his helmet around a little bit, but that was
they're going to have to. The old joke was we're going to meet at the Applebee's afterward. Remember that? Now it's going to be the Chili's. They'll have to ride the Dente together.
That's true. The Chili's. So you mentioned it, Ryan Blaney. Incredible points day for them. Could have been better if that caution falls a little bit differently at the end of the race, but unfortunately, we didn't get to see that. But 7th position still in the standings, but he did gain points on the leader. I think last week he was 140, 149, something like that, 145, 149 back of the leader. 138 points back of the leader now, William Byron, who didn't have that great of a day. He did finish. He came on strong toward the end, finished ahead of Ryan on that last run. But so again, Ryan 7th, 138 points back of the leader, William Byron, who's in first, 67 points over Kyle Larson, who had a dismal day. But they, at least for once, I respect them. They spent the entire race fixing their car.
Yeah.
And they came out and got the fastest lap. The benefit to them is, unlike when he ruined Ryan's race at Darlington? When they just had their car destroyed and he came back out and then caused the caution that, took the win away from Ryan. They only gained 1 point that day with a pretty damaged car. So this one wasn't too bad. I think they just had to fix up the rear suspension. They took a long time doing it, came out, set the fastest lap and got a point. So he got 2 points on the day instead of 1. And for a guy that lost the regular season championship last year by the hair of his chinny chin chin, I can see why Cliff Daniels and that team wants to get as many points as possible. That was a long-winded way to say Kyle Larson is in the 2nd position, 67 points back of William Byron. Christopher Bell is in 3rd, moved up a spot. Chase Elliott is in 4th. Chase had a really strong race, and I think he was one of the guys actually that if that caution doesn't come out at the end too, maybe could have had something for the top 3 as well. Denny Hamlin, who missed the race because after the birth of his son and got the waiver, is in the 5th position. He drops 2 points or 2 positions. It is 110 points back to the leader. Tyler Reddick is 6th. Again, Blaney 7th. Ross Chastain is 8th. Teammate Joey Logano is 9th. And Bubba Wallace is still in the 10th position overall, 193 points back of the leader. So really positive day, especially after, finishing in the 30s the week prior with the incident that they had at Michigan, and heading off into a great weekend of racing back in the U.S. and back at a really important track when it comes to Blaney fans and Ryan Blaney specifically, as the Cup Series heads to the Tricky Triangle in Long Pond, Pennsylvania for Pocono Raceway. Things kick off at Pocono on Friday with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. It's a little odd, a little early. No lights there. 5 p.m. Eastern time on Friday. On FS1, you can watch the Miller Tech Battery 200 for the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Then Saturday, we have practice for the Cup Series at 12:35 p.m. Eastern time from Pocono on Prime. 1:45 p.m. Eastern time, we have qualifying on Prime. And then the Explorer, the Pocono Mountains 250 for the NASCAR Xfinity Series on the CW is at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And then Sunday, June 22nd, you have the NASCAR Cup Series Great American Getaway 400 from Pocono on Prime, on Max for the in-car cameras, MRN, SiriusXM, NASCAR Radio on the radio. And it's the last weekend for the streaming Prime coverage. And hopefully the last weekend our comments will be filled with, that's great, but I couldn't watch the race because it wasn't on the TV. Yeah. So
don't get me started on that.
hopefully by next year people get the Prime situation figured out, but I'm sure they will continue to be just totally shocked when they try to tune in and they can't find it. But sad to see the Prime coverage go. I thought they did a great job again at this race at Mexico. I did miss a couple of races of Prime coverage from actually going to the races. So, but I thought they did another fantastic job this weekend. I love their pre-race show, love the post-race show. And I'm hoping they have some of the same flavor of people when it moves to TNT next.
Yeah.
But they're in different positions. Danielle Trotta goes to pit road. At the booth is still basically the same. I'm really interested to see if they do have a good pre-race show and a good post-race show. Can't remember if this is the last week for practice and qualifying on Prime as well. It might be, because I think TNT in Turner or / Max is going to be broadcasting that stuff. So we'll have to see for next week when it comes to Pocono. Again, I mentioned Pocono Raceway, great for Ryan Blaney, and that is because he got his very first win there in the NASCAR Cup Series in 2017, having to pass Kyle Busch late in the race, holding off a hard-charging Kevin Harvick and spotter Tim Fedewa to win win his very first Cup Series race for the Wood Brothers, win number 99 for them. He was really proud of that. I think that was also a big day, too, for his friend Bubba Wallace, who I think that was when he filled in for Eric Almirola in the 43 car.
43 car, yeah.
Richard Petty Motorsports or whatever they were at the time. I still remember that day because they got some cool pictures together with, him in the 21, Bubba in the 43, and then Ryan ends up in victory lane. The cool story is that Ryan was on the Drivers Only broadcast, the Xfinity Series, the day before, and interviewed Brad Keselowski in victory lane, who won in a Penske car. And then Ryan gets to victory lane in the Cup Series, and Brad found a way to get to the Fox people or whoever and get the microphone and headset, and he's the one that interviews Ryan in victory lane, his former boss, the guy that helped him get into the Cup Series, get into NASCAR beyond the help of his dad and Tommy Baldwin, and set his career on the path that it took. So that was really cool to see that day. And then again, 2024 trip to Pocono Raceway, and Ryan kicks off a great season last year and wins there as well in a Wabash car, and they will be in a Wabash car again this weekend at Pocono. So
nice hat.
Yeah, thank you. 15 starts at Pocono in his career, 95 laps led, average start of 13.6, average finish of 13.4, 7 top 10s, 3 top 5s, 2 victories. Now that win last year did kind of start a new trend for him. The previous 2 races, he finished 33rd and 30th, and then got the victory last year, hoping that the trend continues in the wins, top 5s, top 10s, whatever happened this weekend. So Pocono special place for you guys. You tell the story all the time about how you met co-host Kate, also wife Kate, for you there. When you guys were fans of Dave Blaney and the Tommy Baldwin Racing number 7. But again, like I said, just a special place for Ryan too, because he's won in the Truck Series there. He's won twice in the Cup Series. Hoping someday he'll be able to get some Xfinity starts there, much like Bristol, and then complete that career sweep of all 3 national series there, because he is really good there. And my optimism this week is much higher than it was going into last weekend. So I don't know if you can talk me into being even more optimistic, because this is the kind of race that can turn into a long run at the end. It's a kind of race where fuel strategy might be important. But Jonathan Hassler has proven himself to be really fantastic when it comes to strategies, as long as weird things don't happen. But that's with any strategy. Brings great speed and a great long run car to these races sometimes. And I'm hoping that we see exactly what we saw last year, and you see the 12 car pull into victory lane at Pocono.
Yeah, because you've seen him win this year already, and now we have to, see him win one live now too. So
you've tried.
We're going to be there, so we'll see what we can do. We can pull off one for us too.
So again, if folks want to tune in this weekend to the NASCAR Cup Series at Pocono Raceway, Saturday, June 21st, 12:35 p.m. Eastern Time, you have practice, qualifying at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time. And then on Sunday, you have the Great American Getaway 400, 2 p.m. Eastern Time on Prime and on Max. Now, I think I've been putting this off.
I was like wondering, are we gonna talk about the Fantasy Live League or what?
I've been putting it off because we can kind of combine this. We can recap our race from last week, talk about who we might be looking forward to this week for Pocono when it comes to Fantasy Live. But man, I honestly had a fairly decent lineup, and the picks didn't necessarily go my way, but I'm surprised at where I finished. So starting lineup for me. And I still don't really know what happened here. So Daniel Suarez Only got me 20 points. He finished 19th on the day, but he'd
Yeah.
run in the top 10 for a majority of the race. He did, I
Yeah.
think, get messed up by that last caution,
No,
but
no
he
stage
just
points.
wasn't able to move through the field at the end, which was kind of surprising. So I don't know if he got some damage or something,
Yeah,
or
but
what happened on his last run.
no,
But
no stage points is the problem. No, your problem is no stage points.
yeah,
You know what I mean? You just said it. He finished 19th and got you 20 points.
20 points.
You know?
Yep.
So no stage points. You know, the most dangerous thing of the Fantasy Live League is when you've got road courses and guys are racing the race backwards and trying to get to certain windows and not worried about the stages because they think they can win the race. Shane pulled off, but I don't want to disturb this too much, but Shane pulled off what Larson does.
Yep.
That's win a stage and then win the race. You know, so that's why Shane's points are through the roof. You know, but Shane didn't have any points in the other stage. You know, because he pitted before the end of stage 1. So, yeah, that's the things that kind of, like I said, Ryan was 5th best points on the day, finished 2nd and finished 4th in the stages.
So the rest of my lineup, Chris Buescher got me 31 points. Shane Van Gisbergen got me 50 points. Ty Gibbs 26. AJ Allmendinger 24th. I had Kyle Busch originally in the starting lineup, and I think I had Suarez in the garage.
Yeah,
Kyle turned into that missile. I
Yeah.
swapped him out and put Suarez into the lineup there, which was good because Kyle only got that 1 point on the day.
Yeah.
In the featured matchups, though, I had picked Busch over Chastain. I blame Justin, our friend Justin, for that because he was talking up Kyle ahead of the weekend. That was wrong. I picked SVG over Suarez. That was right. I picked McDowell over Bowman, and that was wrong by 1 position. I picked Gibbs over Elliott, and that was wrong. So, again, if that last caution doesn't happen, I think I get a couple more of these picks right.
At least 10 more points probably.
76 overall, 161 points earned on the day.
I had, what's interesting is I made a move early on because Briscoe was in the middle of that melee in stage 1, and I wish I kind of had looked at it before the end of stage 2 because he came back into the fray, although he didn't have any stage points. But I had Van Gisbergen, I had McDowell, and that was number 1 and number 2 in points for the day because McDowell got 13 stage points also. I had AJ. And AJ did finish 13th, but he was another one that did not race for any stage points. And that kind of, and then I had Suarez, and Suarez got 2 stage points there, but finished, 20th, like you said. And then I put Ryan in when the Briscoe thing happened. And that ended up being really good because that was, 39 total points there because he scored 16 stage points. And like I said, it's 5th best on points for the day. I had half of the lineups. I had half of the matchups. I had Chastain over Busch. I had Shane over Daniel, but then the same thing. I had McDowell. I thought McDowell would beat Bowman, and he did not. And then I had Gibbs beating Elliott, and like I said, Gibbs gets caught in that melee. He gets caught in that pit cycle with the caution. If he hadn't, Gibbs would have probably been the other one that he might have been a podium guy. So. I ended up with 198 points and finished 27th.
Let's take a look at the top 10 in points earned this past weekend in the NASCAR Cup Series race in Mexico City. Starts with a 3-way tie for 8th with Blaney or bust. Blaney kicks beep, and Joe Lopez won, 206 points. 7th was hashtag LGM, 209. We had a tie for 5th between Go 12 Go and Robach, 17, 211 points. 3rd, we had a tie between YRB Believers and Pit Stop Pro with 215 points. 2nd, Dr. Race Chaser, 219 points. And the winner, again, on the weekend, is our friend Jordan Daniels, 236 points overall. Beat everybody by a pretty good margin. Congrats to you, Jordan, I guess. Let's take a look at the overall standings in the Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. Again, I am 68th overall on the season, 2,628 points earned. You've moved up a little bit to the 12th position, Mez 12, 2,996 points on the year. Racer SF, just as an honorable mention here, last year's winner is an 11th overall. I will say she claimed that she last year was the first time she's ever played fantasy, and she thought it was lucky. And here she is, halfway through the season, beating down the door of the top 10. So there's a little bit more in luck. I know she says she does her homework. So kudos to Sherry for making that happen in the 11th position. Here's the top 10 overall standings, Team Blaney NASCAR Fantasy Live League. In 10th, we have Fike21, 3,007 points. In 9th is hashtag LGM, 3,030 points. In 8th is Penske Fan 24, 3,038. 7th, Dr. Race Chaser, 3,053 points. In 6th, it's Go 12 Go, 3,064 points. In 5th, it's Alyssa C, 3,068 points. In 4th, former champion Clyde's Chicken Pit Racing, 3,073. And 3rd, Pit Stop Pro, 3,121 points. 2nd, Vans 12, 3,124. And extending his lead, we have Jordan Daniels in the first position overall, 3,203 points. So we talked about Ryan's stats at Pocono Raceway. Is there anybody else that you are looking at to potentially put in your lineup this weekend? If we take a look at the last several winners at Pocono, and I know one that's on my mind that missed the race this past weekend, but the next gen era at Pocono, we have Chase Elliott, Denny Hamlin, Ryan Blaney have won the races. The guy that I'm thinking about is Dennis Hamlin, who has historically run well there over his career, but there was a pretty big gap. Actually, no, there wasn't. He won in the former car 2019. He won in 2020, and then he won again in 2023. He's coming off of probably one of the best weeks of his life, where he wins the race at Michigan, and then goes and has a baby that very next week. Has a great long weekend off with the family, time to recharge and go back to like one of his best tracks. So I think Denny Hamlin is somebody to watch. Chase Elliott is somebody that's been super consistent all year long. I think you're just one or two moves away, one or two adjustments away from winning a race. Kyle Busch has won there in the past. I keep thinking there's going to be a week where he has an opportunity to win a race. I just don't know when they can put that luck together or when he won't take himself out. One other person to think about here, and it's a guy that powered through the weekend, who admitted in his post-race interview that he could not even walk on Thursday. And that was Alex Bowman, who took a horrific hit at Michigan, got down to Mexico. I don't know. They did what they do to like NFL players and give you some injections to get through it, but had one heck of a race and possibly had an opportunity where he could have won too, depending on the way that the strategy shakes out. He's really good at Pocono as well. He, I believe, has been taken out there. I think by was that Denny, one of Denny's wins there potentially towards the end of a race where he got taken out that he was supposed to win. Or so it's just Bowman's a guy that's knocking on the two, despite the pressure that he's under. We can see if he has an opportunity to win. So those are guys I'm looking at. I'm looking at Ryan. I'm looking at Chase. I'm looking at Bowman. I'm looking at Denny Hamlin. Yeah,
I would say you just basically, because of not just the dimensions of Pocono, but that long straightaway itself, I look at the guys, the team, the top of each thing. One, the top Chevy team, Hendrick, the top Toyota teams of Gibbs, and then, of course, Penske. So it's just a matter from that point forward of like who has the fastest one of their bunch, and then what kind of strategy can they pull off, So they're I think it makes me optimistic, obviously, for Ryan, and knowing what they can do and have done there. But just should be a good weather weekend. It looks like good weather for practice, qualifying, good weather for the race itself, and I just can't wait to get over there and watch it and hopefully see some fun stuff.
Yeah, you talk about good weather there. A place that has not had good weather this year is Sharon Speedway in Hartford, Ohio. That unfortunately, man, Dale Blaney's been back in Dave's 10 car, running some tune-up races on some weekly nights, picking up some victories. But the goal there was really to run the World of Outlaws race, to run the All-Star race. I think they might still have a high limit race or something coming up on the season. But man, those things have been rained out left and right this year, and it's unfortunate to see. I'm hoping that our sprint car fans and Blaney fans up there in Northeast Ohio, they start getting some better weather up there, especially when it comes to those big events. So unfortunately, over the weekend, I think it was the Western PA Speed Week race was rained out over the weekend. So hate to see that happen. Hopefully, as you mentioned, good weekend or good weather for the weekend at Pocono. There's no lights there. They have to get the race in early in the day. And you guys are headed to the track again. And you guys were at Michigan. You took a week off. You're headed to Pocono. I know you gave out a bunch of stickers at Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're going to usually attempt to get to a tweet up, but you're questioning whether there'll be a tweet up or not this week.
Yeah, I got to check with Jeff. Yeah, so I'm going to check with Jeff, because I don't think, if Jeff's not there, I think Bob will probably be in Wisconsin at Road America. I think that's where they go this weekend. So if that happens, Jordan usually, doesn't usually like to do it by himself. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see who's doing what. But I know that there also is the Wood Brothers 75th anniversary thing that they're selling tickets for, that have Josh Berry and Ryan there for a short Q&A session. So that's kind of a cool thing. If you want to look at the Pocono website for that, check that out. That might be a good place to run into me too, I'm thinking, about this point.
Yeah, and if not, I mean, you usually have some sort of Team Blaney gear on throughout the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see Steve out and about, Steve and Kate, say hello. They'd love to meet you. I'd love to talk to you, hear where you're from, hear where you're listening from, and get your perspective on things.
Yeah. So speaking of Wednesday night, 8:00, live here on all of our stuff. We'll be doing our Wednesday night show. Me and Kate, she said she's already prepared some stuff, so I'm going to tune in for that. Let's see what she's got going on. Let's see what she's cooking here. The last couple ones, I've kind of mapped out what we were going to talk about. She says she's got some things ready. So Wednesday night, 8:00, check in with Kate and see what she's got cooking for you guys.
Yeah, and you can find that live streaming on TikTok. You can find that on Facebook, and you can find that on our YouTube channel as well. They've Steve and Kate have kind of taken over our Wednesday live streams, which I think is great. Gives Kate an opportunity to get FaceTime with some of our followers and our listeners, because she does step into the co-host chair anytime that Tara and I are off on an adventure or something, and I have to miss a race weekend. So looking forward to that. So everybody tune in for that on Wednesday night. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight to this episode of the Team Blaney podcast. During the week and on race day, you can find us on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Just search for Team Blaney. We'd also like to encourage you to support the Ryan Blaney Family Foundation. Ryan's official charitable organization benefits brain health causes like UPMC Sports Medicine and the Alzheimer's Association. To learn more, visit RyanBlaneyFamilyFoundation.org or follow them on Facebook, X, and Instagram. So for my co-host Steve Mez, I'm Adam Rogers. We'll catch you next time right here on the Team Blaney podcast.
Congratulations, Josh. Good night, Auckland. Check out the TikTok.